What does the term pro mean to you? It's a question that's been thrown around quite a bit in the tech community. Has it become a trendy label to drive consumers to spend more money on gadgets with features that they might use? Does it give you a particular status when you purchase a pro device? Or is it actually a tool to meet the demands of professionals who require advanced features and capabilities? I've been contemplating with those questions while using the iPhone 15 Pro and the Google Pixel 8 Pro, both priced at $1,000. Yet they offer two very distinctive user experiences, both through their hardware and software. Apple's offering presents a sleek and premium design coupled with an intuitive user interface, while its pro-level cameras can shoot both raw photos and videos in lock profile, which opens up exciting possibilities for filmmakers. Google, on the other hand, has baked in some crazy software wizardry through its AI computation, like transforming an average photo into something beautiful with just a few taps. And it can also swap out faces in a group photo so everyone looks their best. But that's just scratching the surface. So I wanted to sit down and share my experience after switching back and forth between these phones and dive a bit deeper into the nuances of Android versus iOS and what things look like after the software updates since the phones were fresh out of the oven. I do want to kick things off by addressing the price increase on the Pixel 8 Pro. Google did bump it up from $899 to $999, which I'm sure will upset a lot of Pixel fans, but at the same time, they're going all in with the hardware to compete with the iPhone 15 Pro. I've got to appreciate Apple's consistency with pricing the Pro model at $1,000 ever since the iPhone 10. I guess it's the one thing that hasn't been affected by inflation. So the first obvious difference I noticed is in the size department. The iPhone is smaller and more pocketable compared to the Pixel 8 Pro. I guess one could argue that the 15 Pro Max would have been a fair comparison to the Pixel 8 Pro or the standard Pixel 8 to the regular 15 Pro, but when you examine them up close, there are some major differences both in price and feature set. But that's a topic of discussion for another day. Now, I typically don't favor larger phones because they can be inconvenient to carry and use comfortably with just one hand. I mean, with the Pixel 8 Pro, it's just impossible to reach the top UI elements on the display. Plus, it just sticks out like a sore thumb when you're wearing this inside your pants. I mean, try sitting with these things in your pocket. It's too uncomfortable. But I know people who love carrying around bigger sized phones just to get better battery life. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to personal preference. And for me, the iPhone just hits that sweet spot. It's also much lighter than the Pixel since it uses the new titanium frame, which A, is a cool marketing term for Apple, and B, it's a refreshing change from the stainless steel edges that we're used to seeing on previous Pro models. I also noticed a couple of other refinements, like the titanium edge being slightly curved, which complements handling, and the bezels being a bit thinner, but it's nothing game-changing. That being said, the new internal restructuring has also improved repairability and reduced costs compared to previous generations. I'm not quite certain about durability with this material since I've been rocking it with a case, so I've not seen any cracks or anything like that. The Pixel 8 Pro uses an aluminum frame with a matte glass texture at the back, just like the iPhone, so it feels similar when holding them side by side. The design hasn't changed significantly compared to previous Pixels. The polished edges encircles the camera housing, extending all the way at the back, which allows you to set the phone down on a flat surface without experiencing any wobble, unlike the iPhone. Seriously, this is a feature that's way underrated. The bump is also a great place to rest your fingers so you have a better grip. The edges have a rounded profile, and most importantly, we now have a flat screen. Google, I can't stress enough how much this change means to me. It's also less slippery and it improves handling for a gigantic phone. The 8 Pro also comes in a few other colors as well, but my top pick is this porcelain finish. It just resonates earthly tones and looks elegant. That being said, natural titanium finish on the iPhone did get everyone's attention. It's a new color to talk about, and I really like it, and I think it looks pretty good when you put it side next to each other with the Pixel, but not everyone's going to do that. Apple finally made the switch to USB-C, and this time it's a much faster port supporting 10 gigabits per second, allowing for external video recording to an SSD if you're shooting 4K 60 ProRes. They also replaced the ring silent switch with an action button that allows users to map different functions like enabling different focus modes or launching the camera or turning on the flashlight or launching shortcuts, which can basically run any scripts within iOS. So I set it to run or turn on my living room lights that are linked through HomeKit, which is pretty freaking awesome. You can also program this to lock the screen rotation, which is pretty dope. The Pixel lacks a programmable button and it doesn't have the bandwidth to record videos externally, but it's always had USB-C. Interestingly, there is a temperature sensor that lets you point at different objects within 2 inches, which spits out a reading. It's honestly, guys, a gimmick, and I'm pretty sure no one's gonna use this. And from what I've read online, it's not as accurate as an industrial thermometer, so I wouldn't rely on this as a medical device. The power and volume buttons are positioned adjacent to each other, and while they do have a solid feel to them, there have been several instances where I unintentionally pressed the power button when I intended to adjust the volume while watching a video. This was just extremely annoying, whereas on the iPhone, these buttons are placed separately on each side, making it more convenient for me to adjust the volume with my index finger, while the power button is perfectly aligned with my thumb. Remember, it's the little attention to details that add up to the overall user experience. Now, MagSafe for iPhone is still here, and it's awesome. I still use it with my accessories to this day, and it's been rock solid. You can actually easily add this to the Pixel 8 Pro by adding a MagSafe compatible case from Amazon or Dbrand. Because once you experience MagSafe, it's just really hard to go back. Speaking of cases, I do want to quickly comment on the fine woven case from Apple quickly. Simply put, these are among the least impressive cases for $60. The Alcantara-like material in the back has already started to show signs of wear and tear after just a few weeks of use. I've also started to see MagSafe marks. Also, the cutouts don't align perfectly with the phone. I mean, I respect the whole sustainability approach, but come on, Apple, I'm sure you can do better. Now, both these phones have exceptional displays with their own strengths, other than the size difference. They both feature OLED panels with variable refresh rates up to 120 Hz. Apple calls it ProMotion, Google calls it Super Actura. In practicality, these labels are quite arbitrary, but what immediately caught my attention was the iPhone's remarkable fluidity in animations, or just visual cues for a lack of better words. Regardless of the app that you're using, whether if it's scrolling, navigating to the homepage, switching between apps, or opening menus within an app, I couldn't detect any instances of lag or jitter during my testing phase. The Pixel 8 Pro, on the other hand, offers a pretty fluid experience with native apps and OS gestures, but the moment you open up third-party apps like Reddit or even Google's own YouTube Studio, you're immediately going to notice the jittery performance when scrolling. You can simply flick and get to the bottom of the page since it has acceleration dialed to 11, but if you're looking for smooth short scrolls and more natural feel, the iPhone just has it dialed in. I also noticed that the adaptive brightness setting on the Pixel didn't always respond to different lighting conditions, particularly when I'm outside. I constantly found myself maxing out brightness manually on the Pixel, whereas on the iPhone, it just displayed a more responsive behavior. The quality of the displays is exceptional. I honestly wasn't able to tell the difference between them side by side. They're both sharp and ideal for content consumption. And as a pro photographer, I really enjoyed editing photos on both these phones. Although the Pixel's larger display provided a slightly better editing experience. The 8 Pro is also using a built-in optical fingerprint sensor, which works 90% of the time, but I think it's fair to say that Google is using outdated hardware. I would have preferred an ultrasonic reader similar to what's used in the Galaxy S23 series, as it's known for greater accuracy and responsiveness, and it doesn't blind you at night when you're trying to log into a phone like this one does. It was super annoying. Now, Google did add Face Unlock as a second way to log into the device, but it's not as accurate or advanced as Apple's Face ID tech, which worked really well for me in various lighting conditions, except when I'm wearing sunglasses, but you can disable that extra security layer within iOS. And for those of you wondering, both these phones are pretty close at their lowest brightness setting. What about battery life? So here's the thing. On paper, the Pixel 8 Pro has a bigger battery compared to the iPhone 15 Pro, which makes sense considering its size. But the fact of the matter is, you can throw everything, including the kitchen sink, inside a phone and still expect trash battery life if the software isn't optimized for the hardware. And initially, I was getting pretty poor results on the 15 Pro, especially when I was traveling in Italy, when I was using the cameras and GPS, since I had my main SIM on this one. I actually forgot to bring my USB-C cable with me for the day and had to rely on the slow reverse wireless charging feature on the Pixel 8 Pro to charge the 15 Pro. So simply put, traveling with the iPhone just gave me serious battery anxiety issues. Now, Apple addressed some of the power efficiency issues with a software update later on, but I still feel like year after year with the iPhone, specifically the Pro model, it just keeps getting worse and worse on battery. One of my close friends upgraded from the 13 Pro to the 15 Pro and instantly regretted his purchase. Now, he's a huge power user, and if you look at his screen on time, it clearly reveals how frequently he had to plug in his device. So bottom line, if you're spending too much time on your phone using Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and just anything intensive, the 15 Pro might leave you wanting more. Perhaps I would steer you into the Pro Max. As for me, my day is largely spent in the studio researching, scripting, and shooting, so I'm not constantly glued to my phone. Almost every day I end up with 60% battery remaining, which I think is pretty good. The Pixel 8 Pro, on the other hand, is far more superior than the 15 Pro. In fact, I managed to get more than a day worth of battery life on a single charge, even while engaging in activities like hour-long video calls with my friends, using GPS, and getting my fair share of social media content for the day. It's a solid choice for power users, and I guess that's what you would expect for a phone this size. Now, I charge my devices wirelessly, and I use MagSafe for the iPhone and the Pixel stand for the 8 Pro, and the charging speeds are almost the same. The Pixel does support faster charging at 30 watts compared to 20 watts on the iPhone. Unfortunately, none of them come with chargers in the box, which sucks, so you're gonna have to get them separately. Now let's switch gears and talk about the software experience. And I know this is like opening a can of worms, but I want to set the record straight. Both iOS and Android have their own strengths and weaknesses. I'm just here to share some of the things that I've noticed from using both platforms back to back. So let's start with the UI navigation, and I think iOS has done a few things better than Android in this department. For instance, I love how Control Center brings up all the necessary settings that can be adjusted with just a simple swipe down from the top of the screen. It's a one-stop hub for managing the iPhone's core functions. I particularly love the home automation integration, and it saves me a ton of time going through the dedicated Philips Hue app. Plus, there is quick access to my Apple TV remote and different focus modes that I can cycle through every single day. It's intuitive and it works really well. Whereas on Android, I find that there's a significant amount of wasted space in the quick settings drawer, which often requires more swipes to access specific options. For instance, why can't they consolidate Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, hotspot, and airplane modes into a single expandable menu accessible with a long press? If you want to disable data mode, you have to navigate deeper into the Internet tab and scroll down, or even enable hotspot. That's just a whole different thing. All of this just deviates from the user-friendly Android experience I cherished from Android 11. Here's another example. If I'm watching a video in landscape mode, and if I wish to adjust the brightness or audio levels on iOS, I can simply swipe down from the top of the screen to make the necessary adjustments on the fly. On Android, that same gesture exits the landscape mode, which is super annoying. So what is required is a gentle swipe from the top to reveal the battery overlay, followed by additional swipes to reach the brightness slider. Also, Google Chrome for Android is due for a redesign, and I believe it could benefit from drawing some inspiration from Safari. Take, for example, the placement of the address bar. Having it at the bottom is a significant advantage for one-handed use, as it's easily accessible with your thumb, and you can easily swipe left or right to switch between tabs. Whereas on Chrome, it basically has the address bar at the very top, replicating a desktop-like interface, which, let's face it, is completely different from mobile, and that can be somewhat challenging for navigation considering how large the phone really is. Now, while there are third-party browsers that can replicate a Safari-like experience, not everyone's aware of that. I also discovered the convenience of controlling the volume on Spotify linked with a Bluetooth speaker even when the iPhone was locked, whereas on the Pixel, I had to unlock the phone, open the app, and then make the adjustment. Then there are the app optimizations for each platform. Take the Instagram experience. While the main page fills up the entire display on the Pixel, the moment you start interacting with things like posting a story or a reel, the app gets cut into a different aspect ratio. But this also applies to the other non-native apps. iOS has a strict app review process, which leads to a more consistent and optimized experience for users that is finely tuned for Apple devices, whereas on Android, it's a bit challenging to get everyone on the same page since there's a broader range of devices from various manufacturers that can lead to a more fragmented ecosystem. Plus, you get the dynamic island on the 15 Pro. Now, if you care about it or not, it's a beautiful marriage between the hardware and the software. The app support has grown since its debut with the 14 Pro, and I still use it to this day when I'm on the road hopping between Maps and Spotify. It certainly helps with the multitasking experience, whereas on the Pixel, It just shows up in picture-in-picture mode. I kind of like how Apple did it with the dynamic island, where it's just splitting the icons. It's living in the background, not causing any distraction. It just looks cool when you're seeing splitting icons and shape-shifting things. It's just Apple's way of designing the UI, and they just did a really good job of that. With all that being said, I absolutely love the modern look of Android 14 on the Pixel 8 Pro. There are a lot of features that Google has baked in which really helped with my day-to-day tasks that I hope iOS can take note of. Starting with the weather and event prompts on the lock screen. It's a simple yet effective solution that helps me keep track of my schedule and dress accordingly. You also get new lock screen animations and customizable layouts for each item, which all adds to a dynamic and fluid experience when logging into the device. There's a cool new AI wallpaper feature that basically lets you generate images based on a set of words or prompts to match your theme. The results are pretty good, but I found that most of the time it lacked resolution. But overall, fantastic feature. It's just a great way to kill time. You just have complete control over the home screen layouts, allowing you to freely arrange icons and add third-party widgets that can be further personalized with unique skins. There's a themed icon pack that matches the color palette of your wallpaper, which is pretty neat. If you look at iOS 17, Apple has stepped up the customization ladder over the last year or so, because you can now choose different font styles and set your desired colors for the lock screen, display a set of widgets, but it's just not as flexible as Android since it's open source. If you haven't noticed already, I'm using a custom home screen setup for the iPhone featuring icon packs I designed myself to just make it more personable. It took me a lot of time to get this thing set up using shortcuts. I had to download third-party widgets to create empty spaces on the home screen. It just goes to show that I spent a lot of time trying to customize this phone versus the Pixel. So customizability, huge win for the Pixel. iOS is also pretty restrictive with its file management system. It just lacks granular control. For instance, on Android, you have a bird's eye view of the phone's content, including downloads, photos, videos, audio files, documents, and apps. And of course, you have the ability to access the root directory. In contrast, iOS basically consolidates everything into a single location, which looks unorganized. It's also worth mentioning that Google Drive lacks a direct download feature on iOS, which basically requires additional steps for file downloads, whereas on Android, it's right there at your face. You can just quickly get access to things, and it downloads directly, and it's fast. Also, transferring files between Android to a PC is noticeably quicker than to a Mac. Sometimes macOS just doesn't recognize the Pixel 8 Pro. It even loses connection, even when using the Android file transfer app for Mac. Transferring files from an iPhone to a Mac is straightforward with options like AirDrop and other continuity features. Transferring stuff from this to a Windows PC is challenging. There are other third-party solutions, even from Microsoft, like Intel Unison or something like that, that allows you to share files between your iPhone and the PC, but from my experience, it barely worked. So there you have it. Also, now with the 15 Pro having the ability to shoot 4K ProRes video in log, it just chews through storage. So you'll need a USB-C cable to offload the footage quicker. Oddly, the one that they provide in the box only supports USB 2 speeds, so you'll need to get a proper USB 3.2 Gen 2 cable that supports 10 gigabits per second throughput. This is something that should have been included with the phone in the first place, especially if you're planning to give it the Pro designation. The same thing applies to the Pixel as well. And I guess the last thing that I want to touch base on is the software support for these phones. Apple has a great track record for supporting iOS on iPhones dating back to the iPhone XR, which is a 5-year-old phone. Google did break the ice by announcing 7 years of software updates, starting with the Pixel 8 Pro, which is a huge commitment, and I hope they stick to that, but it would have been cool if they announced that support for the Pixel 7 and the Pixel 6 series. So yeah, it's just a Google thing to do. Finally, I want to wrap things up by discussing the camera systems. Now, to be completely honest, I haven't seen a significant improvement in image quality with smartphones in general over the past few years. I can still get great results off of my Pixel 5 and even my iPhone 13 Pro. In fact, a lot of the enhancements have come through software updates, and I guess a little bit of hardware with larger sensors. Both the iPhone 15 Pro and the Pixel 8 Pro boast cameras capable of capturing photos and videos with remarkable detail. But the true disparity lies in the in-camera experience. I noticed a significant difference in speed between the Pixel camera app and the iPhone. When capturing fast-paced scenes like pets, kids, or cars, the Pixel is just painfully slow. Pressing the shutter multiple times often results in only a couple of usable photos due to the blurriness or just being out of frame. In contrast, the iPhone's camera is snappy and just very quick at previewing shots. Now, both phones have the ability to shoot RAW, basically allowing to take advantage or utilizing the hardware to its fullest. However, there's a catch. The iPhone requires you to dive into the general settings to enable features like higher megapixel format, Pro RAW, and resolution control. You know, features that ideally should have directly been accessible on the main camera app. On the other hand, Pixel has just conveniently integrated them within the app, which is great. But unfortunately, the experience on this phone just gets worse and worse. It becomes even more laggy and unresponsive with a noticeable hold still overlay even in well-lit environments. Previewing images takes an eternity. The iPhone does become slightly slower in Pro RAW mode for fast-paced subjects, but still it manages to capture more frames than the Pixel 8 Pro. So bottom line is you just have to be more patient when shooting RAW on the Pixel, and as a pro photographer, I could certainly see how this delay could potentially cause you to miss those key shots. This also highlights how far advanced Apple's A17 Pro chip when compared to the Tensor G3. Even when exporting photos in Lightroom with my edits, you can easily see the significant time it takes for the Pixel to export 15 RAW images. And just so you know, these photos were taken separately on each phone. Now, speaking of photos, if I were to get super technical, the Pixel captures more detail thanks to its larger sensor. Although this difference is mostly noticeable when you digitally zoom in, which, let's face it, not a lot of people are going to do. I also observed that the iPhone tends to lean towards warmer colors, while the Pixel just embraces cooler tones, so I guess it's just an auto white balance thing. In low light situations, the Pixel does more processing to brighten up the image, while the iPhone captures a more true-to-life image. And when it comes to night mode, the iPhone does a good job preserving vibrant colors, while night sight on the Pixel appears to be more muted. Additionally, Pixel offers better zoom capabilities, preserving more detail, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, I was actually pleasantly surprised by the results from both of these phones. The cherry on top of this is the ability to push the images in post, especially when you shoot RAW. And both of them were a breeze to work with, guys. I got a little creative with my edits, but you can tell how much more information these RAW images can retain. So whether you're a pro photographer or just an enthusiast looking to explore photography, this feature alone opens up a whole new world of endless creative possibilities. But keep in mind that shooting RAW can eat up your storage. To give you a little bit of context, this photo that you see here taken on the Pixel is about 16.5 megabytes in size versus 6 megabytes when processed. The same goes for the iPhone. So I would choose these storage options when buying either of these phones responsibly. Now, Google did add some of its own AI editing tools like Magic Editor that lets you remove distracting elements in a photo. I gave it a shot and I honestly wasn't that impressed. A lot of the times it fills in those spaces with random things or it just looks distorted. So I wouldn't rely on it 100%. I didn't get a chance to test best take since I actually don't have a lot of people to hang around with, but it does work really well from what I've seen. I'm sure your family would love having this feature on their phone. There's also a crazy video boost feature that's supposed to use cloud services to enhance the video quality on the 8 Pro. This is supposedly coming in December, so I'm curious to test that out. Now, while we're on the topic of video, the iPhone just ones up the Pixel by enabling users to shoot in log, which is essentially a flatter profile, allowing for greater control over the dynamic range and, of course, color grading in post-production. The iPhone has always been known to be the gold standard for video shooting, and this is just a cherry on top. You just get incredible image stabilization, great autofocus, and just more manual controls with third-party apps. I can see how this can be an incredible tool for filmmakers who are on a budget trying to come up with a short film. It just unlocks a whole new realm of possibilities, and it just sparks more creativity as well when it comes to the post-processing side of things. The Pixel is no slouch either. Out of the box, it features awesome stabilization with good dynamic range. Oftentimes, it does fight for exposure, and it does tend to introduce noise when using the telephoto lens, but you can still capture great looking content. It just would have been cooler if Google added a log profile, just like the 15 Pro, because these both are Pro phones, right? So there you have it, guys. I know this was a long video to watch, but I really hope that it was worth every minute because I spent a ton of time testing both these phones back to back. I hope the little nuances that I discussed helped you get a better understanding in terms of which phone excels in user friendliness. Hardware-wise, both the 15 Pro and the Pixel 8 Pro are awesome. But if I were to pick a winner, I'm gonna go with the iPhone. And I know this is gonna upset a lot of Android enthusiasts, and trust me, Apple isn't paying me a dime to say this. While both Google and Apple did provide us with these phones for review, my choice is simply based on the core user experience, ease of one-handed operation, and dependable camera system. And to me, the iPhone 15 Pro is a device that's gonna stay in my pocket.